Hello everyone, so I'm Gautam. Coming with the video solution, the analysis of CAT 22 slot 2 DILR section. Actually prepared for this slot. So coming with all the video solutions, all the solutions to the questions. There were 4 sets, 5 questions each in 4 sets, total of 20 questions in this slot. Slightly different from last year's slot where we had 20 questions but divided into 4 sets of 2 for 4 questions and 2 of 6 questions. But this time we had 4 sets with 5 questions each. One of the set was practically the easiest of all, that was on revenue and cost. The other 3 sets involved certain bit of reasoning and certain bit of calculations as well. So coming up with the solution, the first set in my slot, in the slot 2 of CAT 22, was more or less talking about a kind of a diagram. It could be called as a network based diagram where there was a warehouse at the center. There were 4 suppliers. So we can read the question well. It says every day a widget supplier supplies widgets from warehouse, where W was a warehouse, to 4 locations, that is Ahmednagar, Bikrampur, Chitrachak and Deccan Park, denoted by A, B, C, D. The daily demands of widget in each location is uncertain, independent of each other. The demands and the corresponding probability values were given for each of the 4 cities A, B, C, D. And they've given an example that in Ahmednagar, the probability that it will have 50 units would be practically 40% chances, and there'd be 60% chances that the demand would be of 70 units. The lines in the figures connecting the location of the warehouse represent the 2-way roads. So you can go either from Ahmednagar to Bikrampur or Bikrampur to Ahmedpur, and both ways the route would be of 6 kilometers. Further on, this says every day the suppliers get the information about the demand value for the 4 locations, create a travel route and try to deliver what is the demand. While making the route plan, the supplier goes to the location in decreasing order of demand. So the location with the highest demand would be visited first, followed by the second highest demand, followed by the third, and then visiting the location that would have the lowest demand. Most importantly, when we're calculating this, it is clearly said while creating the route, the supplier would either follow the direct path if available, or would choose a path that would have the least or the minimum distance. Okay, so either you can go through the direct route or you have to go through warehouse, and that is the only possible 2 ways that you can go to a location to another location. Now, starting with the question that was following it. The first question says if the last location visited is Ahmednagar, what is the total distance covered in route? Now, what we need to figure out is the most important point in this question was when we're calculating the route plan. Obviously, the location with the highest demand has to be visited first. And as the question says, last location visited was Ahmednagar. So what we need to make sure that Ahmednagar should have the minimum demand out of the 4 locations. So if Ahmednagar would have a demand of 70, it could not be less than or equals to D and B. So we would negate this option and would say that Ahmednagar must have a demand of 50. If Ahmednagar had a demand of 50, none of the locations could have a demand less than 50. That means B must have a demand of 60, D must have a demand of 50, and C could have a demand of 70 or 100, would not make a difference in any ways, would be more than A. So if I try to chalk out the route plan, that means that supplier will go to C first because that would have the highest demand, either 70 or 100, would not make much difference. Then would go to B, which had a demand of 60. Then will come to D with a demand of 50, and then would go to A with a demand of 50. That is the only possible way the supplier could visit Ahmednagar A as a last possible destination. Now, because we need to calculate the total distance travel, so starting from warehouse, going to C is going to take 12 kilometers. Then from traveling from C to B, I had 2 options, either to go through warehouse, but that would be 22 meters. Going this way would be easier job, or probably he'll have to choose the route which will be of the minimum distance. So C to warehouse to B would give me 22 kilometers. So choosing the path from C to B will give us 4 kilometers. Now from B to D, there are 2 possible ways. Either he can go through the route directly, that is, there is no direct route to B to D, so he has to go through warehouse. So going through warehouse would travel 10 and to 12 kilometers to reach D. Now from D, there are two options. Either he will go through warehouse, but going through warehouse is going to give me 7 kilometers. Direct route is 8. So obviously we'll go through warehouse because that is talking about the minimum distance. So the warehouse route or the route through warehouse is going to give me another 7 kilometers. So this is going to give me 16 plus 28 plus 7. The total distance traveled in this case has to be 35 kilometers. The question had none of the options. Okay? So it was a theta question. So definitely would have marked 35 or probably would have typed 35 as an answer. So that was question 1 from this set. Question 2 was talking about the total number of widgets delivered in a day is 250. Now we need to figure out how could we end up delivering 250 widgets. Now A had two options. Either I would deliver A may 50 or can deliver 70. B, I could have, or the supplier could have delivered either 40 or 60. C, the options are either 70 or 100. And D, you have to supply either 30 or 50. Now 90 plus this would be 190, 130, 230 and 280. So this is the minimum possible supply and this is the maximum possible supply. Now, logically understand, if we have to deliver 250 widgets, that means a difference of 30 from here. Ideally, here it's a possible difference of 20. Again, a possible difference of 20, possible difference of 30 and 20. So need to just look at from 280 to 250, if I have to subtract 30, the only possible case is I can subtract this 30 from C. I could not have any other combination subtracting 30 from 280. So the possible combination in this case, we can easily make out, would be something like this, where there would be a combination of 70 here, 60 here, 70 here, and 50 here. So this would be the number of widgets to be supplied at each of the case. So he'll be going through, A will be supplying 70, 60, 70 and 50. So if I need to calculate the total distance, now because two routes have equal demand, two locations have equal demand, A 70 and C 70, but A being closer to warehouse, he'll start with A, then would visit C, then would visit B, and then would visit D. That would be the decreasing order of demand, with choosing A above C, reason being had lesser distance than traveling to C. So from warehouse to A, he'll travel 5 kilometers. From A to C, as there is no direct path available, so has to travel this 5 and 12, 17 kilometers. C to B, a direct route of 4 would be the minimum distance. And B to D, the only possible is through warehouse, that is 10 plus 2. So that would be the total distance he has to end up traveling. That would be 22, 26 and 38 kilometers in all. So two parts to be decided. One, how you're going to supply the 250 widgets, and then what should be your route plan to probably go in decreasing order of the demand by these locations. So the net answer would be 38 kilometers is the total distance it has to travel. Moving to the next in the question set. The third question in the set talked about the delivery of 260 widgets. Now, as we figured out in the previous question, now because we had to go by minimum, it had 50 and 70, B had 40 and 60, C had 70 and 100, and D had 30 and 50. Now we probably need to subtract 20 from this to get 260. In the first advice, I could have chosen these three and could have subtracted 20 either from A, C and D, the maximum. So C, definitely we had to supply 100 for sure. Fine. The second important condition is the route must ends up at Bikrampur. That means Bikrampur must have the minimum of all. So had I would have chosen 60 here, D would have a lesser demand. So route has to end up at Vikrampur, so has to have 40 ka demand. So logically, bache, if I says this would be the respective demand of 4 locations. So A must have a demand of 70, which has a probability of 0.6 or 60%. B must have a demand of 40, that has a probability of 30%. C must have a probability of demand of 170%. And D would a demand of 50 with 60%. So I have to go to A with a probability of 60% and 30% for B and 70% for C and 60% for D. This is the only possible case. So probability of A into B into C into D would be the net probability that I'll have. So multiplying these 3 or rather these 4, I'm going to get a probability of 7.56% in net. The next one, 4th. It says the first location visited in the warehouse has to be Ahmednagar. That means for sure it has to have a demand of 70, and this also can have a demand of 70 because Ahmednagar has to be more than C. So one thing is very clear. To make a warehouse say, pehle we have to move down to A, then we'll have to move down to C. After that, what is the chance that the total distance covered is 40 kilometers? Now logically understand, when I move from W warehouse to A, I'll be covering 5 kilometers. A to C, the supplier has to cover 17 kilometers. So 5 plus 17 would end up at 22. Now, this is for sure. Uske baad, what is the chance that the total distance covered in the route is 40 kilometers? Logically, this is 22. Now, because these two conditions are already satisfied, after that, he could end up choosing either B or D. Now, moving to B, he'll have to travel what? Either he'll travel this 4 or would travel this 12 plus 10. But traveling this 12 plus 10, logically, bache would give you 22 more. So he would not do that. He'll go to B with 4 kilometers and then would come to D with 12 kilometers. So this would give you 22 plus 4, 26 plus 12, 38. Not a possible case. The total distance to be covered has to be 40 kilometers. Fine. On the other chances, total chances covered in the route is 40 kilometers. अब बच्चे 40 kilometers cover करने के लिए हमें दूसरा route देखना है. If we'll go from C to D first, that would be 6. And then to B is gonna give me 6 plus 12. That would be 40. That means we are very sure that he has to travel D first and then would travel to B. Perfect. So it is very clear that 70 is already there, 30 is already there, sorry. And the route that he has to choose, he must choose first to D and then to B. So chances of visiting here would be 60% and then it would be 30%. So the net answer would be 18%. Fine. It is already specified that he has visited Ahmednagar, so we'll have 70 ka demand and then would definitely visit C. That would again be very sure. Fine. The only thing that we are figuring out whether he will travel from B to D or will travel from D to B. To make it 40 kilometers, he had to travel from D to B, which had a chance of 60% and 30%. That is a net chance of 18%. Moving to the next question. It says if Ahmednagar is not the first location to be visited in the route, that means Ahmednagar and the total route distance is 29 kilometers, then which of the following is a possible number of visits delivered on that day? In the previous question, we've already figured out that when we're traveling 250, in this question, second question, the total distance to be traveled is 38. So this option we can eliminate by the question number 2. Now, we are left with 200, 210. Again, going by that fundamental of minimum and maximum in each location, we understand this is 50 and 70. We had an option of 40 and 60. C had an option of 70 and 100, and D had an option of 30 and 50. Now this was 190. We need to understand, if I need to add up something, the minimum I can add is 20 in each of them. So in a way, we can negate the option 200 as an option is not possible option. We need to add minimum of 20 or can end up adding 30. Now, if I'll start with 30 as an option, because this is the only possible option in this case, I'm trying for 220. In that case, C would have the highest. So C would have the highest means 100. So warehouse C, he'll go to C. Then we'll go to A. Then we'll go to B, and then we'll go to C, because he'll be choosing minimum of res 3 and maximum of C to add 30 to the minimum of 190. So in that case, the distance traveled from warehouse to C would be 12. C to A would be another 17. A to B would be 6. And B to D would be 12. But that would be way ahead of 29. So this again option is eliminated. So what is left is 210, which would obviously become the valid option. In 210, obviously we could have tried, he could have gone to A first. He would have traveled 5, then would go to C, would have traveled 12. That would give you a total of 17. Needs to add 12 more to that. Adding 12 more to that, he could have traveled to B first with 4. And then to D, but that would be 17 plus 4, 21 plus 12. This is not a valid option, so could not go to A as well. Then we'll start with D as a feasible option. D cannot be the first location to be visited. So we'll go to C as the first location. So this would be 70 here. We'll choose a lower route. We'll go to B, let's say. We'll have 60 here. B to A could turn out to be 6. And A to D could turn out to be 7. So he's choosing this route. First here, second on this route, third on this route. So this is 12 plus 4, 16 plus 6, 22. And third, when he'll travel from A to D, we'll have 7. So it's going to give me a total of 29. But as a matter of fact, if obviously the first 3 options are already negated, might not have tried for the 4 option and could have marked it, would not be in a need to actually calculate the complete route which was required to make the 29 kilometers. But still, the valid route has to be W, the warehouse to C, then to B, then to A, then to D. That was the 5 questions that were there in this first set. Moving to the second set, question number 6 to 10. That was probably the easiest of all. If you seriously look at the data was pretty straight in itself. The charts, there were 2 charts given. The first chart talked about 4 companies coded with A, B, C, D. And the chart shows their revenue and the cost in crores for 3 respective years of 2019 to 2021. So the data clearly says in 2019, A would have a cost of a revenue of 90 and a cost of 85. Fine. Similarly, in 2021 का जो example दिया हुआ है for company C, 2021 में company C had a revenue of 100 and a cost definitely of 30. So that was the first chart. The second chart talked about the employee strength. Let's read it very carefully. The second plot shows the number of employees employed by the company at the start of each of these 3 years, as well as the number of new employees hired each year. So that means company B had 250 employees at the end of 2021. So if I look down at company B in 2021, the total number of employees at the start of 2021 was 250. And 30 new employees joined the company during the year 2021. So in this complete year, 30 new hires were there in company B. Now, if you look down to the question that were asked, Question number 1, question number 2, question number 3, and question number 5 were majorly talking about profit and loss. And question number 4 was talking about employees. So we just need to probably figure out the revenue and cost. So company's profit would be nothing but revenue minus cost. So if let's say I have to calculate the profit for company A in 2019, that would have been 5 crores. That is company A. So looking at question number 1 now, it says considering all the 3 years, which company had the highest annual profit? Now, 2 ways of doing it. I could have understood an imaginary line here. This line would be a line of no profit, no loss, because this would be a line where the company would be having equal revenue and cost. Fine. Now, anything above that signifies a loss. Anything below that would signify a profit because revenue would be more and cost would be less. Now, considering all the 3 years, which company had the highest annual profit, we can figure out the more we move ahead from it, the more is going to be the profit. So we can figure out that this company C is farthest from this line. So this is going to have a profit of 70 crores in this year. So given an year, the highest annual profit was company C in the year 2021. Still, if you are probably in a confusion, I would have definitely advised you to make a small table, calculate the profits of each of the company. So just to make your things a little more simpler, I've tried to figure out the profit of all the 4 companies in these 3 years. If not, doesn't want to take chance, could have gone by this, could have drawn the table, could have calculated the profits of each of the 4 companies. Probably the 4 questions that would be easier to follow now. So the first question, which company had the highest annual profit? I would have gone by company C in 2021. Second question was again pretty straight if you have understood the data. Which of the 4 companies experienced the highest annual loss? So the annual loss was definitely in company D with a loss of 30 in 2020. So that means I would have gone by option 4. The next question talks about the ratio of companies' annual profits to its annual cost and lowest value. So 4 companies for 2019 I am concerned, and we need to figure out profits ratio to cost and minimum निकालने. So 2019 में company A का जो cost होगा वो 85 है. So company A के लिए this ratio would be 5/85 or 1/70. Company B के लिए this ratio would be 25/75. That would be 1/3. Company C के लिए this would have been 5/2019 में would be 20 cost. That would be 1/4. And D के लिए बचे this would be 10 divided by the total cost of 2019 of company C would be 40. So what we can figure out, minimum की बात कर रहे थे तो definitely for company A because that has to be 1/17 and rest all is definitely more than company A. So the performance in this terms has to be minimum with company A. The next in the series was talking about employees. So now I've only took up the chart that was talking about employees right now. The total number of employees lost in 2019 and 2020. Now logically understand, when I'm talking about the number of employees that has left the company or that have lost the company, Kenneth says that would be the total number of employees at the end of 2019 is what they begin with. Then would be some new hires in 2019 and 20. And this minus the people who have left the company would be the final figure at the beginning of 2021. So when I need to figure out this people who have lost, so Kenneth says the number of lost would be given by 2019 की beginning में जो number है plus the new hires for next 2 years minus 2021 की beginning में जो है. So the people who have lost or who have left the company would be calculated as 2019 ki beginning plus the new hires minus the left out, the total at the beginning of 2021. These would be give you the number of people who have left the company in 19 and 20. Now starting with company A, so the people who have lost 2019 में company A के beginning में 20 employees थे. New hires, so sorry, 150 employees थे, my mistake. New hires would be 20 and 35. That would be 55. Minus 21 के end पे बेटे 150 हैं. So there would be 55 employees who have left the company in 19 and 20. Company A. Let's look down for company B. Company B, the number of employees in the beginning was almost 210. The new hires for 2019 and 20 would be almost 35 plus 45, that is 80. Minus the number at the end of 2021 is 250. So this means almost 40 employees have left the company B in 2019 and 20. Looking out for company C. Company C, the number of employees in the beginning of 2019 was almost 325. New hires for 2 years would be 40 plus 45, that is 85. At the end is again 325. So 85 employees have left company C. And company D, employees in 2019 was 400. New hires for 2 years would be 30 plus 35, that would be 65. At the end again was 400, so 65. That gives you the figures of the total people lost or left the company in 19 and 20. Because they are asking for the least of all of them, so we can easily make out now the least has to be in case of company B. Perfect. Fifth question was talking about profit per employee is a ratio of company's profit to its employee strength. And for this purpose, employee strength is in year average strength of beginning and at the end. Now, because they were talking about 2020, we had to use both the charts where we were talking about profit as well as the employee strength. We have already calculated the profit for all of the 3 years, so I'm using that chart again. So for company A, the profit to employee strength. Now, employee strength for 2020, they have clearly specified it has to be taken as the average at the beginning of that year in the beginning of next year. So A ke liye would be these two figures to be used. This would be 140 plus 150 divided by 2 would be 145. So employee strength for 2020 would be at the beginning of 20 and beginning of 21. The average of these two would turn out to be 145. For company B, that would be 50 upon average of these two figures. B would be 240 plus 250 divided by 2 would be 245. For company C, it had to be 10 upon, this is same 325 in each case. And for D, it has to be minus 30. Again, because we're talking about the highest profit, let's not move on to it. Now we can easily see bete, it has to be one of A or B, where highest has to be definitely with B. Reason being, if we can calculate on calculator also if you want to. Otherwise, we can figure out the numerator is twice of A, B's numerator is twice of A, but denominator is less than twice of A. So as a fraction, B has to definitely give me a better value or a higher value than A's ratio. So that was the 5 questions that were asked in this set. Probably would have worked on profit, would have been easily done up away with all the 5 questions. Moving to the next set. The next set was talking about some salesman selling some items, a product called Tricky. Now, it says a salesman was employed to sell a product called Tricky among the households in various housing complexes. On each day, a salesman is assigned to visit exactly one housing complex. An housing complex would have any number of houses. Once a salesman enters a house, he can meet any number of households in the time available. However, if a household makes a complaint against a salesman, then he must leave the housing complex immediately and cannot meet any other household on that day. Fine. So if the first household would make a complaint, he has to be meeting only one. An household may buy any number of ticket items or may not buy. The salesman is keeping a record on all the items sold and on the household that he met on that day. Then they say the success rate of a household or a salesman, for a day is defined as the ratio of the number of items sold to the number of household that he met. Some of the details on the three salesmen, Story, Hockley, and Lahore, on 2 particular days are given below. It says, over the 2 days, all of them had met the same total number of households. That was important. So day 1 and day 2 के जो total households हैं, that has to be equal. And each of them on day 2 days have to sell a total of 100 items. So day 1 and day 2 की जो total sellings है, each of the salesmen has to be 100 only. On both days, Lahore met the same number of households and sold the same number of items because they have to end up selling 100. So obviously would be selling 50-50 on each day. Hockley could not sell any item on second day. So second day sale would be 0 because the first household he met on that day complained against him. So obviously he was able to meet only one household on day 2. He would have met rest all on day 1. Then Tory met 30 more household on second day than on day 1. And Tory's success rate was twice. So if I have to go by this question, there were the 5 questions that followed it, talking about Tricky sold by Lori, Tory, Hockley and all that. I will try to figure out the table, figuring out what is the number of households that each of them visited on each day and the number of items sold. We are very clear they have to sell a total of 100. So starting with better this, we have already figured out. Now, Lahore met the same number of households and sold the same number of items. So Lahore ke case mein, we could be very sure he would end up selling 50 on day 1 and 50 on day 2. Because he met equal number of households, let it be XX. So total number of households for each of them has to be 2x. Hockley had to sell 0 items on day 2. So must end up selling 100 items on day 1. And because of first household, he met on second day, complained against him. That means he met only one household on day 2. So would have definitely met 2x minus 1 on day 1. Tory met 30 more household on day 2 than on day 1. What does that mean? The difference on these two has to be 30. So dividing this 2x on that part, he would have met x minus 15 on day 1 and x plus 15 on day 2. That is the basic information that was initially given to us. Now the last line says, Tory's success rate was twice that of Lahore on day 1. So assuming that he sold Y items on day 1, the question wanted to say is, Tory's success rate would be Y upon x minus 15. That should be twice of 50 by x. That is Lahore's success rate. I repeat, Tory's success rate on day 1 would be Y upon x minus 15. Lahore's success rate on day 1 would be 50 by x. So that would give me Y upon x minus 15 should be twice of 50 by x. And Tory's success rate on day 2, because he has to end up selling total of 100, he would sell 100 minus Y items here. So his success rate on day 2 would be 100 minus Y upon x plus 15. That has to be 75% or 3/4 of 50 by x. Now, Obviously, what we can understand is we can equate y from both equations. So equating y, I can understand here this y has to be what? 100 by x. But in first equation, it has to be 100 by x into x minus 15. In the second equation, if we can look at 100 minus y should be equals to 150 by 4x into x plus 15, or बच्चे में y would be equals to 100 minus 150 by 4x into x plus 15. Now, I would obviously equate this y. Considering this y, I would say 100 by x into x minus 15 should be equals to 100 minus 150 by 4x into x plus 15. Taking LCM, I would say this would be 400 into x minus 15 should be equals to 400x minus 150 into x plus 15. I've obviously negated x from both sides after taking LCM of this. So this is going to give me 400x minus 6000 should be equals to 400x minus 150x plus 2250. So this 150x is 6000. Sorry, this is minus 6000 minus 2250, which is 3750, or x turns out to be 25. Try to figure out, bache. Now, if this x has to be 25, what we can figure out is this has to be 25. Lori met 25 households on each day. This was x minus 15, so would be 10. X plus 15 would be 40. This would be 49 and this would be 1. That is first equation. Then obviously if x is 25, we can understand y has to be what? We can substitute x as 25 here. That would be 4 into 10, 40. Substituting x is equals to 25 here. Y turns out to be 40. If y is 40, this would be 40 and this would be 6 and 60. And if this is 60, so sorry for that. This was already figured out, was 100 and 0. So this would be the final table in terms of the number of households visited by Tori, Hooghly and Lahore, and the number of items sold by each of them. इस क्वेश्चन में एक सबसे बड़ा डिसएडवांटेज जो मुझे लगा था when I was taking the question. First and second question was practically a data-based question, and the other questions were talking about something between, less than, more than, and all that. So probably could not have gone by any jugaad or something like that. Plugging on the information was practically not possible by taking this examination. So had to actually go and solve all the questions, all the equations. So solving the equation probably would be able to figure out the complete table. Now, all the questions probably would be an easier attempt. So what was the total number of households met by Tori, Hooghly and Lahore on first day? That has to be 10 plus 49 plus 25. So my answer would be 84. Fine. So total number of households they have met on day 1 has to be 84. The total number of items sold by Tori on day 1, so that clearly shows now has to be 40. Then how many households did Lahore met on say day 2? So Lahore met on day 2 has to be 25. Now because that has to be 25, so the option has to be between 21 and 29. How many households, the fourth question says, did Tori met on day 1? So Tori on day 1 has to meet 10 people. So the answer would be 10 or less. And the last was, which of the following statement is false? Probably this could have been done even without solving this. This was probably the state question. Because one of the statement clearly says that Tory had 75% success rate on day 2. So if we have probably figured out among the three, Tory had the highest success rate, could not have because it was already 75% of Lahore. So could not be true. So which of the statement is false? Definitely would go by option 2. Tory success rate cannot be the highest on day 2. Perfect. Otherwise, the other option, if you check, Tories had a higher success rate on day 1. Yes, his success rate was 4 on day 1 and 1.5 on day 2. Third option says Lahore had the lowest success rate on day 1. Yes, Tory had a success rate of 4. Hooghly slightly more than 2. Lahore has exactly 2. And fourth says among the three, Tory had the highest success rate on day 1. Yes, he had a success rate of 4. Rest has less than that. So that was about the third set that occurred in the slot 2 of CAT 2022. Okay, now coming to the last set that occurred in CAT 22 slot 2. The last set again talked about something, the basic information on reasoning plus DI of specific DILR. Was some information that was talking about a specialty supermarket selling 320 products. It says each of the product is either cosmetic or nutrition. So need to figure out that none of the product could have both. So some of the people probably misunderstood it with set theory. No, it has to be either cosmetic or nutrition, but cannot be both of them. Each of the product has to be either foreign or domestic. So have to be one of them. And each product had to have at least one. So there was definitely some set theory involved, where the product could have either only FDA or only EU approval, or could have both of them also. Then further information talked about some of the products, the number of products that are domestic, number of products that are foreign. Among the domestic, how many would be cosmetic, how many would be nutrition, how many would be having approvals. So trying to figure it out, and in format of table again, the questions were pretty not very straight because 2 questions were in the format of theta, non-MCQs. Then 3 questions were talking about the values that could be in the certain range. So need to figure out the amount of the number of products available under each category. So to begin with, if I say there are total of 320 products and there would be equal number of domestic and foreign products. So out of total of 320, I'll have 160 domestic and 160 foreign products. Half of the domestic products were FDA approved cosmetic products. So half of domestic products, that means 160 may say there would be 80 would have that FDA approval. So in दोनों का जो sum था वो बेटा 80 था. Perfect. None of the foreign products had both the approvals. So both the approvals wale foreign products has to be 0. While 60 domestic products had both the approvals, so यहाँ पे जो total sum था, that was 60. I'm not saying FDA approval means only FDA approval. FDA could have EU as well or only FDA. Then there were 140 nutrition products and half of them were foreign products. So there will be 70 products, 140 ka half, which would be nutrition mein foreign, and the another half would be 70, that would be nutrition domestic. So domestic nutrition products would be 70, foreign nutrition product would be 70. That clearly 60 signifies 160 minus 70. Out of total domestic products, there would be 19 cosmetic category, and out of 160 foreign products, again 90 would be in cosmetic category. Fine. Then this says there were 200 FDA approved products. So total of FDA has to be 200. This may say 80 were domestic, so obviously 120 has to be foreign. 70 of them were foreign products. But logically वो क्या कहते हैं? There are 200 FDA approved products. ठीक है? यहाँ पे उसने बच्चे जो 80 दिया हुआ था, एक second, so sorry. It says none of the foreign products have both 50. So sorry, I missed out something. Half of the domestic products were FDA approved cosmetic products. I missed out something, so that was my mistake here. So sorry for that. it says half of the products were FDA approved cosmetic products. So बेटे यहाँ पे जो 80 हैं, 160 में से 80 ऐसे हैं जो FDA approved cosmetic हैं, and out of total of 200 FDA products, 70 of them were foreign products. So यहाँ पे total 70 है, मतलब यहाँ total 130 है. अब ये अगर total 130 है तो बेटे ये 80 है, that means this has to be 50. And 120 of them are cosmetic. अब बेटे ये already 80 था, that means the rest 40 cosmetic होंगे, वो foreign products होंगे, और total 70 था, इसलिए this would be 30. So this was an important information, probably needs to figure out clearly. मैं repeat कर रहा हूँ, if we would have started, it would have said यहाँ से half of the domestic products were FDA approved cosmetic products. So out of 160, 80 products are 80 domestic products are FDA approved cosmetic products. So this would be 80. Total 200 है, 70 of them are foreign. So अगर यहाँ total 70 था foreign में, so this has to be total of 130. So this had already 80, that means this had to have 50. Here it was total of 70. इसमें से 120 of the FDA approved products was cosmetic, 40, 80 were already domestic cosmetic. That means rest 40 has to be foreign cosmetic. So if this 40 is there, this has to be 30. So out of the initial information given, we could have figured out the total number of domestic and foreign products, the total number of domestic cosmetic and nutrition, the total number of foreign cosmetic and nutrition, and individually the total number of total FDA approved products in each of the category. Fine. What is missing till now is EU approval and the number of products with both the approvals in case of domestics. Yes, one thing I could figure out here is both approvals क्योंकि 0 है, so out of 90 cosmetic, if there are 40 with FDA approval, there must be 50 with EU approval. 70 nutrition products में से 30 had FDA approval, so remaining 40 must have EU approval. None of the product in foreign category could have both the approval and must have at least one approval. This would also be available to us. So this is something that was initially available according to the given information. So this was the total net figures that we could figure out. Now going by the questions, how many foreign products were FDA approved cosmetic products? Foreign, FDA approved cosmetic. So definitely would have gone by the option as 40. Again, was a data question, so should have marked 40 as an answer. Second one, cosmetic products did not have FDA approval. Logically 90 cosmetic हैं, इसमें से 80 के पास approval है, तो there will be 10 domestic products without the FDA approval, and another 90 में से 40 के पास approval है, so there will be 50 foreign cosmetic products that would not have approval. So the answer would have been 60, which is option 1. The first two questions were pretty straight on the data given. The next question was involving some kind of basic understanding. Third says, which of the following best represents the number of domestic cosmetic products? So domestic cosmetic products that had both the approvals. So मुझे इसकी range define करनी है. Now logically understand, we had total of 60 over here. Obviously, if I minimize this, I would get maximum of this. अब इसमें minimum कितना होना चाहिए? We need to figure out that. अगर यहाँ minimum कर दूं, so I could have said 70 nutrition है, 50 FDA approved है, तो हो सकता है बच्चे यहाँ पे जो minimum possible FDA both approvals है वो 50 होंगे. So sorry, पहले मैं इसको maximize कर रहा हूँ. So इसकी जो maximum possible value है वो 50 हो सकती है. The simple reason being there are 50 FDA approved products. So both approvals वाले अगर यहाँ 50 हो जाएंगे तो cosmetic का जो minimum आ जाएगा that has to be 10. So at least 10 होना चाहिए. ये ऑप्शंस वैसे ही नेगेट हो गई. और एटमोस्ट में अगर मैं ऑप्शन देखूं तो 60 और 80 है. So probably need not to calculate because maximum तो 60 ही हो सकते हैं. The reason simple being both approvals के total domestic has 60. So उसमें से सिर्फ कॉस्मेटिक की भी बात करूं तो ऑब्वियसली अगर यहाँ 0 भी दोनों अप्रूवल्स के होते और ये सपोज 20 होता, so this could have been maximum of 60. So that is why the minimum could be 10 and maximum could be 60. Perfect. The fourth question. It was talking about 70 cosmetic products did not have EU approval. Logically understand. Now talking about cosmetic products. Did not have EU approval. These 40 did not have EU approval because both approvals wale 0 hain. 90 में से 50 had EU approval. So foreign products में से there will be 40 which would not have EU approval. So domestic में से we could have understood there will be 30 products which does not have EU approval. Which does not have EU approval. That means out of 90 there will be 60 that would have EU approval. Now what is it asking is then how many nutrition products have both the approvals? Now logically understand here 80 had FDA approval, 60 had EU approval. Assuming this to be X, by simple rule of set theory, 80 plus 60 minus X should have been the total domestic cosmetic products. It would have given me X as 140 minus 90, that is 50. So this would be 50. If this is 50, this has to be 10. So the number of nutrition product that had both the approvals had to have 10 because this has to have 0. So the right option would have been option number 4. So here it involved a bit of set theory. The foreign products which does not have EU approval would be 40. That means there will be 30 domestic cosmetic products which would not have EU approval. So out of 90, that means the remaining 60 had EU approval. So 80 plus 60 minus the one with both the approvals, I would have gone by that. This would have given me 50. That means there will be 10 nutrition products that would have both the approvals, taking this 60 under consideration. So coming to the last question of this set, this slot 2 of CAT 22. The last question talked about there were 50 nutrition products that did not have EU approval. Now, if we need to look down for 50 products that did not have EU approval. Now, nutrition made total 70 hai. If we can figure out easily that 40 had EU approval, so 30 had not EU approval. So out of the foreign products that did not have EU approval in terms of nutrition would be 30. That means in domestic there will be 20 which would not have EU approval. So out of this 70 nutrition products, 20 would not have EU approval. That means the remaining 50 will have EU approval. Now again going by basic set theory, this 50 plus 50 minus X would be the total number of domestic nutrition product. This will give you X as 30. So if there are 30 domestic nutrition products that have both the approvals, there will be 30 domestic cosmetic products that would have both the approvals. What I'm looking for is domestic cosmetic products that did not have EU approval. So looking at this, assuming this to be Y, 80 plus Y minus 30 should be equals to 90. So this Y would be 40. So there will be 40 domestic cosmetic products that had EU approval. Because they were asking for the domestic cosmetic products that did not have EU approval, would be 90 minus 40, should have gone by the option of 50. A theta-based question should have definitely typed 5050. So that was all about the number of questions that occurred in slot 2 of CAT 22. That was all from my side for this day. Thank you so much. You can keep connecting us on this phone number and at gp.careerlauncher.com. Thank you so much for the day.